With Project 91 making their first ever start this past weekend with Kimi Raikkonen, we're going to talk about future drivers who should potentially get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, we've got 25 drivers who should be considered for the Project 91 car in the long term and the future. We're going to talk about that today. First driver I think that absolutely should be considered for the Project 91 car is a driver actually made the start for Project 91 this past weekend at Watkins Glen, Kimi Raikkonen. Kimi Raikkonen had very little to almost no experience. He only had a little bit of testing at Virginia International Raceway and did have an Xfinity Series start and a Truck Series start. But he was really impressive. While he did not compete for the win and crashed out at the end, Kimi Raikkonen nearly had a chance at a top 20 or even a top 15, and a lot of the race was inside the top 10. For a guy that had no experience really in that Cup car, it was really impressive. And I think that Kimi Raikkonen has some unfinished business. Kimi Raikkonen has showed some interest in once again maybe getting behind the wheel of the Project 91 car, and I think it would absolutely be really fun and really fantastic if he got another opportunity next year. We know that Project 91 wants to run between 6 to 8 races or maybe even more going into next year, and I think that Kimi Raikkonen should 100% be considered to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car once again. He was really impressive, and I would love to see Kimi Raikkonen have another opportunity. The second driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is a driver who has shown interest in racing in NASCAR and a driver that is supposed to at some point next year has been promised to race in Daytona 500, Julio Castroneves. Julio Castroneves, of course, a 4-time Indianapolis 500 winner, winning it in 2001, 2002, 2009, and in 2021. And Julio Castroneves, like I mentioned, has been promised an opportunity to race in the Daytona 500. After winning at Five Flags Speedway, the guy who's basically running the operations for the SRX told him, Don Hawks, told him that he's going to find a way and find an opportunity to get Julio a ride for the Daytona 500. Well, the Project 91 team at Trackhouse Racing has said that they are looking to run the Daytona 500. Who's available? Julio Castroneves. And Julio Castroneves has also expressed interest over the years in racing in NASCAR. He actually, in fact, after winning the Rolex 24 of Meyer Shank Racing, he would basically said that he would love to run the Daytona 500 or run a road course. I think the Project 91 car would be a great place to start and get an opportunity to race with the team. I want Castroneves in that car. I think he'd do very solid, and I would love to see Julio Castroneves get an opportunity to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. He's the second driver on my list. The third driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and currently driving the 48 for Chip Ganassi Racing IndyCar and a 48 Action Express Cadillac in IMSA, Jimmie Johnson. Now, a lot of people are wondering, why Jimmie Johnson? Jimmie Johnson struggled in IndyCar. Well, I have a big reason why I'm mentioning Jimmie Johnson. There's a couple reasons. Number one, Jimmie Johnson has multiple times this year has expressed interest in racing with the Project 91 team and racing in multiple events. He expressed interest at the Indy weekend for the Indianapolis 500. He expressed interest in saying he would love to do the Indy NASCAR double. And Justin Marks has said that if Jimmie is to do the Indy NASCAR double, he would absolutely allow Jimmie Johnson an opportunity to get behind the wheel of that car. The other instance is that he has expressed interest in racing in the Chicago Street Course race next year. So you've got two potential places where you could put Jimmie Johnson in your car and he can get behind the wheel of it. I think Jimmie should absolutely consider it, and I think Jimmie Johnson would be competitive. I know the last couple years his Cup Series career in IndyCar really haven't been positive, but I think Jimmie Johnson absolutely would do solid in that car. I think Trackhouse is a great organization, and they were acquired by Chip. They acquired Chip Ganassi Racing's Cup program. So you can imagine potential opportunities and possibilities if you put Jimmie Johnson behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. The fourth driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is a driver that will not be returning to Formula 1, at least for McLaren next year, and a driver who in the past has expressed interest in NASCAR, Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo, like I just mentioned, he will not be returning to McLaren next year. And Daniel Ricciardo has been, in the past, has expressed interest in racing in NASCAR. But he has also said that he's not interested in racing in ovals. Well, he also almost had an opportunity a few years ago maybe to race for an organization, Xfinity, and he also drove the Dale Earnhardt, the old school Wrangler 3 car at COTA last year. I think Daniel Ricciardo would be a great option. He's a big fan of the Earnhardt family, but of course they're not really associated with Trackhouse Racing. But I think Justin Marks would love to cart over Daniel Ricciardo to get an opportunity to get behind the wheel and to get a lot of Australian fans and fans from down under to have an opportunity to watch one of their favorite drivers go out there and race. I think Ricardo would be an absolutely great option, and I think he absolutely should be considered to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. The fifth driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is the current driver of the 8 car for Chip Ganassi Racing IndyCar, Marcus Erickson. Now, there's a couple reasons why I'm going to mention Marcus Erickson. Number one, Marcus Erickson, of course, won the Indianapolis 500. It was interviewed on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio after he won that race, and he says he is very interested in racing in different forms of auto racing in the United States, including in NASCAR, and has expressed interest. As well, he has expressed interest this past week after the first race of the Project 91 car. He expressed interest in getting behind the wheel and being one of the drivers that should be considered for the Project 91 car. I would love to see Marcus Erickson have a great opportunity to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. I think he would do pretty solid. I know that Marcus Erickson really has not done amazing on wheels except racing Indy 500, but I think he would do really good in that car. I think that car would be a very solid candidate, and I think Marcus Erickson should absolutely be considered to get behind the wheel of that car. He's high up on the list because he has shown interest in getting behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. The sixth driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is 2009 Formula One champion, and the drivers also kind of expressed interest in getting behind the wheel of the Project 91 car, Jensen Button. Now, Jensen Button, for a lot of you, is going to be a major shock, but I have some reasons why I'm considering Jensen Button. Jensen Button has expressed in the past interest in maybe racing in the Indianapolis 500. He also was supposed to drive for McLaren in the United States in IndyCar. But he also, like I said, has expressed interest in racing in the Project 91 car. And I have said that basically like this Formula 1 car, that's Formula car, this Project 91 car is kind of, the Cup car is kind of a little bit more similar to a Formula 1 in an Indy car nowadays. I think Jensen Button would do a really good job behind the wheel. I really think he would. And with the competition that there is in the field and with the experience he has, I know it's been a few years since he really had experience, but I think Jensen Button would do a really solid job in the car. I may be BSing, but I think Jensen Button would be a great candidate to get behind the wheel. He should absolutely be considered for the Project 91 car. The seventh driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is a former NASCAR driver, a driver who's won the Baja 1000, has won kart and IndyCar races, has won some endurance races, and a driver who's been very successful and has won almost everything you can win. We have Robbie Gordon. Now, Robbie Gordon is a long shot, but I would definitely think Robbie Gordon should be in that Project 91 car, at least for one race. And here is why. Robbie Gordon has, like I said, won a couple NASCAR Cup Series races. 2 of them on road courses. Once at Watkins Glen and once at Sonoma, both of those coming in 2003. He also, like I said, is a really good road course racer, as well as the fact that he has an amazing and a great personality. Robbie Gordon is someone that really has a no F's given attitude, someone that really doesn't care, and is going to have an attitude that he's not going to care much. I think Robbie Gordon would bring a great personality and a great attitude, and would probably cause some drama on the racetrack, of course, but I think Robbie Gordon would be great for the sport, bring eyes on the sport. He knows how to get people involved, and I would love Robbie Gordon to have an opportunity to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. He should absolutely be considered for the car. The 8th driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is 2-time IndyCar Series champion, Josef Newgarden. Josef Newgarden, of course, like I mentioned, a 2-time IndyCar Series champion, is another driver that has kind of expressed interest in racing in NASCAR. In fact, he said this at the SRX race at the National Fairgrounds, that he has at points expressed interest in racing the National Fairgrounds, which was the first time he had raced in a stock car, and actually was kind of impressive, at least in the heat races where he won a heat race, but then, of course, in the main race, he unfortunately spun out. But I would love Josef Newgarden to get an opportunity. Now, the big thing that could affect Josef Newgarden's opportunity and eligibility to get behind the wheel is the fact that he is part of the Team Penske family. And would Team Penske allow him to go do it? That's one thing I'm not entirely sure they will allow. But Josef Newgarden, having an interest in racing, I think he would do good. And you have to also remember that he tested the Charlotte Roval back in 2019 when NASCAR was racing their second event. So why not? I would love Josef Newgarden to have an opportunity. He'll be looking to win his 3rd championship at IndyCar here in a couple weekends. But I would love to see him have an opportunity to get behind the wheel of the car. The 9th driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is someone that I think is going to surprise a lot of you. But we have a former NASCAR Cup Series driver, a driver who at points has expressed a little bit of interest, and a driver who's come close to winning Cup championships, Carl Edwards. Yes, you heard that right. I'm going to mention Carl Edwards here. This one is probably going to be a little bit of a shock as well for a lot of people. But hear me out here. Carl Edwards Like I said, we talked about this. He has at points expressed interest in NASCAR once again. He's been kind of a big fan of the next-gen cars. He said that last year and expressed a little bit of interest there in getting potentially back behind the wheel. But again, he has not really said how likely it would be for him to get back behind the wheel. He also wasn't a great road course racer. However, Carl Edwards has a lot of fans, and I think Carl Edwards will bring a lot of fans back in the sport that have kind of left the sport with how classy of a driver he is and how great a personality he is. He could bring a really good personality to that Project 91 car, and I think he would do a really good job behind the wheel as well. So I think it should be considered, and I hope he does consider an opportunity to drive the car. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is a former NASCAR Cup Series driver, and a driver has won pretty much every major event in the world that you can win, whether it's the 24 Hours of Daytona, F1 races, IndyCar championships, Juan Pablo Montoya. Juan Pablo Montoya has won 2 or 3 NASCAR Cup Series races and 1 NASCAR Xfinity Series race, that being 2007. Also got his first Cup win in 2007. Juan Pablo Montoya is one of the most decorated drivers in racing history. In fact, I consider one of the greatest drivers in racing history. 2 Indy 500 wins, multiple IndyCar championships, 1 car championships, 1 F1 races. He won a lot of major events. And I think that Juan Montoya would be a great addition, and I think he'd do really well. Now, I know that he has not competed in NASCAR since 2014, and maybe he's not considering it, but Justin Marks should be trying to car him over. I think he'd be a really great addition for the sport of NASCAR, and again, I think he'd do a great job. So I would love to see him come back and race with Project 91. He should be considered, in my opinion. The next driver I think that should be considered for Project 91 car is 7-time Formula 1 champion and currently driving for Mercedes-AMG, Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is a driver, of course, one of the greatest Formula 1 drivers. In fact, I think probably the greatest driver in Formula 1 history. Lewis Hamilton has also at points gone behind the wheel of a NASCAR Cup Series car. Remember back in 2011? He actually swapped with Tony Stewart. He drove Tony Stewart's Mobil 1 car, the 14 car that went on to win the championship, while Tony Stewart got behind the wheel of his Formula 1 car when he was driving for McLaren. Lewis Hamilton, and there's another big reason why I mentioned Lewis Hamilton, is Lewis Hamilton would bring a lot of fans in, especially in the Daytona 500. Lewis Hamilton, you think Kimi Raikkonen being at the race brought a lot of international fans to watch, a lot of F1 fans to watch. If Lewis Hamilton comes over and races in NASCAR, you're going to have a major brigade of European fans and international fans tuning in. So Lewis Hamilton is a must, in my opinion, to get behind the wheel. Justin Marks, please go after him. I would love for Lewis Hamilton to get an opportunity, and he should be considered to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is a current IndyCar driver, and a driver is about to be a former IndyCar driver, and an Indianapolis 500 winner, Tony Kanaan. Now, Tony Kanaan, like I mentioned, 2013 Indianapolis 500 winner, and will potentially next year be looking to win his second Indianapolis 500, but it's unclear if he's even going to race or not. But there was actually a really interesting article that came out from a Brazilian page saying that he was supposed to make a start or 2 this year in the NASCAR Cup Series or the NASCAR Xfinity Series, whether that's with Spire Motorsports or their organization, that is to be determined. But Tony Kanaan has, throughout his time, expressed interest in racing in NASCAR. He's another driver, I think, that probably also watched how Kimi Raikkonen did. I would love for Tony to have an opportunity to race. He would be a great addition to the series, and I would love for him to have an opportunity. I hope that he is considered to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car in the future, as he has at points expressed interest. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is a current driver of the 5 car for McLaren SP and IndyCar, Pato O'Ward. Pat O'Ward, of course, a driver who actually at one point was also part of the Red Bull Racing Academy. Pat O'Ward is a driver that is on the edge of potentially trying to compete for his first IndyCar Series championship and has already won 2 races so far in IndyCar. Pat O'Ward has also been really good on ovals. He won at Iowa earlier this year. And I think that Pat O'Ward would be a very solid addition to the Project 91 car. He's very young. He's only 20 or 21 years old. And I think that he would, again, I think like other drivers, I think getting behind the wheel of his car, he would do extremely good and extremely solid. Hope he's considered. It'd be fun for him to get behind the wheel for sure. And I hope he has an opportunity to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car at some point. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is the current driver of the 12 car for Team Penske IndyCar, Will Power. Will Power, the 2014 IndyCar Series champion and also 2018 Indianapolis 500 winner, is very decorated in the world of racing. Now, Will Power is generally competing mainly in IndyCar. But I think that Will Power should basically explore other opportunities and possibilities, and I think NASCAR would be a great possibility. Now, very similar, of course, to Joseph Newgarden, he is going to need to have a way for him to get out of potentially having issues with Team Penske when he does get behind the wheel. But if you have an opportunity to race in NASCAR, I think you should try to negotiate with Roger and have an opportunity to get behind the wheel. And Will Power would bring a lot of IndyCar fans as well. He is basically tied right now for the most poles in IndyCar, I believe, currently at the moment. He's about to surpass Martin Andretti for the most poles in IndyCar. I think it'd be great to have him over. I think it'd be very fun for sure, and he should be considered for the Project 91 car. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is a guy who's been a part-time IndyCar driver and also won the SRX Championship this past year, Marco Andretti. Marco Andretti is a driver, of course, who did pretty okay in IndyCar, not fantastic, but went to SRX and won the championship there. And I think he really found his calling with the SRX in the last couple of years. Like I mentioned, with 2 victories already in there, he's done really good over at the SRX. He also is making his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut later this year for Big Machine Racing in the 40A car. So he is going to have that experience that's going to be required to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car if he does want to run in the Cup Series. And I think Marco Andretti would love to have an opportunity to race in the Cup Series. Very similar to his grandfather, Mario Andretti, I think he would love to win a NASCAR Cup Series race. I think it'd be fun to have Marco in for sure. He's going to have experience in Xfinity if he does get involved, and I would love for him to have an opportunity to get in Project 91. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is the current driver of the 27 for Andretti Autosport and who will be moving over to Arrow McLaren SP and IndyCar, Alexander Rossi. Alexander Rossi has been back on a tear. He's been really solid in IndyCar this year with already a victory so far. It also is noted that I think if anybody in the IndyCar field, I think Alexander Rossi could really do a good job if he got behind the wheel of that car. He has won with a lot of different organizations. He's won with organizations like Team Penske in IMSA and has also won with other teams like Wayne Taylor's organization. Actually, basically, Wayne Taylor's organization, the Kanika Minolta team. He did really good over there. And I think Alexander Rossi would adapt to the car and pick it up very, very quickly and would have a lot of pace and a lot of speed as well. Rossi, I think, should be considered. He's a driver I think could get behind the wheel and do great, and he should absolutely be considered for the Project 91 car. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is currently driving for the 3 Corvette team in IMSA, and the drivers all over the years has expressed interest in racing NASCAR, Jordan Taylor. In fact, talking about Jordan Taylor was actually supposed to make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut for Junior Motorsports in 2020, but never got approved and never came to fruition. Jordan Taylor is a major, major NASCAR fan. Of course, he has a great personality. He has that really cool character called Rodney Sandstorm. And I think bringing that character would be really, really fun in a NASCAR. But also, I think Jordan Taylor would actually do really good behind the wheel. And he's also rumored to be potentially a candidate to get behind the wheel of the Hendrick car at Le Mans next year. He's actually helping test that car currently as we speak. I would love for Jordan Taylor to get an opportunity. He's got experience, IMSA experience, that would, of course, he's IMSA. The GT cars are very similar to the Cup cars. I think he would really adapt to the car really well, and I hope he gets an opportunity to get behind the wheel of that car. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is currently driving a 3 car for Team Penske IndyCar, Scott McLaughlin. Scott McLaughlin is currently competing for his first ever IndyCar championship. He scored 2 wins so far this year, those coming at St. Pete in mid-Ohio. He's on the outside looking in, but he's got a shot to still get it done. But Scott McLaughlin has had potential opportunities, and people have looked at Scott McLaughlin as a driver who could really do well in NASCAR. In fact, it was rumored at one point that maybe at this point this year, if the Penske Xfinity program had been up, they were going to give Scott McLaughlin some Xfinity Series starts this year. There was talk that they were going to give him some starts. So that's one reason why I think he should be considered. Because I think Scott McLaughlin, if he gets behind the wheel of the Project 91 car, I think he instantly wins. Because a lot of people compared him to Rick Mears, and anything he gets behind the wheel of, he does well. He's also one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Repco supercar drivers in the history of the series. I think it'd be fun, a really fun addition for sure. Hope he has an opportunity, and hope he is considered for the car. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is a driver who's won a Formula One championship, has won Le Mans 24 Hours, and has competed in the Indianapolis 500, Fernando Alonso, also known as Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso is one of the most decorated drivers in the history of racing, has won a lot of major events, has transitioned to other forms of racing, has done well in those forms of racing nonetheless, and I think it would be absolutely fun and amazing for Fernando Alonso to come over and at least race with the Project 91 camp. Now, he's going to have to find some time outside of Formula One to do it because one of the big issues is with the Formula One calendar, how many more races there's going to be with Formula One. I don't know how he would do. I don't know how he'd be able to do it. But also, he has experience behind the wheel of a Cup Series car. He actually did test when he and Jimmy Johnson swapped back at Abu Dhabi in 2020. He and Jimmy Johnson swapped, and he got behind the wheel of the 48 Cup Series for Hendrick Motorsports. So he has a little bit of association with a Cup Series car, but these cars now are different compared to what they used to be. But I think Fernando Alonso would do a great job, and I think that he should be considered for the car as well. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is two-time Repco Supercars champion and a driver who's kind of at points expressed interest, Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen is one of the potentially greatest Repco Supercar drivers of all time. He's on the verge of already getting there, and he's on the road to potentially doing that and winning more championships there. So what does he have to lose at this point? I think when I look at Shane Van Gisbergen, I think it would be very fun for him to have an opportunity to really get behind the wheel. He absolutely needs to get considered. I would love for Shane Van Gisbergen to really have an opportunity, and I hope he does get considered to get behind the wheel. He would be really fun to have for this series, in my honest opinion. I would love for Shane Van Gisbergen to get an opportunity behind the wheel of that car. Next driver I think that should be considered to drive the Project 91 car is four-time Formula One champion. A driver who's won over 50 Formula One races, Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian Vettel is one of the greatest Formula One drivers in the history of Formula One. And I think that Sebastian Vettel, I think that he would love to get behind. I don't know if he would love to, but with him not going back to Formula One next year, with him retiring from Formula One, I think he would do very solid. I don't know if he'd do great because he has also at points expressed interest. I think he's also expressed interest in racing IndyCar as well and having a couple IndyCar starts. But when I look at Sebastian Vettel, I think it'd be fun for sure for him to get behind the wheel. I think he needs to be considered. I hope he does get a potential opportunity to drive in Cup. And I'd love for him to come over. And again, very similar to Lewis Hamilton and other drivers on this list, he should be considered to get behind the wheel. The next driver I think that should be considered to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car is Kamui Kobayashi. Kamui Kobayashi has been driving the 48 Action Express Racing Cadillac and has also won Le Mans 24 Hours as well, and is also a former Formula One driver. Didn't really have a lot of success in Formula One, but went to IMSA and other series like WEC and was very, very successful. I think Kamui Kobayashi is one of the most underrated race car drivers out there currently at the moment. When I look at him, he has done super, super impressive. He's always been the best driver in that 48 Action Express car. He's competed in that. He's won a lot of races and has been very successful, including the Rolex 24 as well. I think Kamui would do an amazing job, and I hope he does have an opportunity, and hope he is considered as a potential candidate to get behind the wheel of that car. The next driver I think that should be considered to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car is two-time Indianapolis 500 winner and the driver who currently drives the 51 for Rickware Racing's with Dale Coyne in IndyCar, Takuma Sato. Takuma Sato, a big reason why I mentioned Takuma Sato is because Takuma Sato has won a lot of oval races. Well, two major oval races, but they're the two biggest races. But I also think that Takuma Sato would actually do pretty well behind the wheel. I think it'd be fun to have him over. I really think it would, because you look at Takuma Sato and look at his stats, he's very underrated in IndyCar. I know he's had also some very dark moments in IndyCar. Look back at 2018. But then he really, really bounced back those years and really, really improved. I think it'd be fun for sure to have him get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car, and I think he'd do really well. And I think he really could be aggressive and get up on the wheel and do very solid, in my honest opinion. The next driver I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is a former NASCAR Cup Series winner, a former NASCAR driver, and also a former Repco Supercars driver, Marcus Ambrose. Yes, Marcus Ambrose. One thing about Marcus Ambrose is I miss Marcus Ambrose. He has not raced in NASCAR since 2014. He drove part-time in 2015 for DGR, Dick Johnson Racing, with Team Penske associated with that team, but wasn't really successful over there and then kind of retired. But I think Marcus Ambrose, it'd be fun to have him. Now, I know that Marcus Ambrose has kind of said publicly that he really would not like to return. But I think Marcus Ambrose, with how good of a road course racer he is, I think it'd be fun to have him for sure over in this series. I think it needs to happen. I think it needs to be considered, and I hope that Marcus Ambrose is at one point in one day is considered for the Project 91 car. The 25th person that I think that should be considered for the Project 91 car is a driver, two-time DTM champion, winner of the Rolex 24 two times, and also made his NASCAR Cup Series debut on the same weekend as Kimi Raikkonen. We have Mike Rockenfeller. Mike Rockenfeller didn't do fantastic with the 77 team, but I think you put him in a really competitive car. I think Mike Rockenfeller would do not only an incredible job, but I think he would do an amazing and a really good job as well. He would do great. I think he'd tend to be a little, not better than Kimi Raikkonen, but I think he'd do decent, especially if we get rain on the track. Ooh, I think he's going to be somewhat of a threat in that race for sure. Hope he has an opportunity. Hope he is considered. The next driver I think that should be considered to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car is a driver who's being rumored at one point to go to Formula One, and also drivers won multiple IndyCar races, Colton Herta. Now, I forgot to mention Colton Herta earlier in the video, but I would probably ranking him up a little bit higher. Colton Herta has expressed interest in racing in NASCAR a couple times. Earlier this year, in an article from motorsports.com, he expressed some interest in getting behind the wheel, maybe in an oval race, and also was at one point considering driving a truck in the Eldora Dirt Derby. He wanted to race there when Eldora still had the track. So why not? I think it'd be fun for him for sure, and I hope he gets an opportunity and is considered at one point. And the final driver I think that should be considered that I almost forgot is six-time IndyCar Series champion, potentially seven-time IndyCar Series champion, Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon absolutely needs an opportunity. He is one of the drivers that I think is one of the greatest drivers that's ever raced. He has won the Rolex 24. He has competed in the Le Mans 24 Hours. He's competed and won the Indianapolis 500 and has won every major event that you could win outside of a NASCAR race, and Formula One, of course. I would love for Scott Dixon to have an opportunity. He needs to be considered. If Trackhouse can do it, any way to get him over there, I think it'd be fun to have him for sure and get him to other forms of racing like he has. So he needs to get an opportunity. Hope Scott Dixon is considered. So anyway, that is every single driver that I think, and there's probably more that I didn't mention, but those are all the drivers who I personally think should be considered as potential candidates to get behind the wheel of the Project 91 car. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's get to over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. Who did I not mention you think that also should be considered for the car? And of all the drivers I mentioned in today's video, who do you think should be the most likely to get behind the wheel of the car? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, we're going to have a massive NASCAR news video. That's going to be dropping really early in the morning. And then we will basically have another big video dropping because we have the NASCAR Xfinity Series race review from Daytona that will be coming out on Friday as well. Make sure to tune into that. Got some other videos on the way as well, and we're getting close to the playoffs. Sunday, more than likely, is going to be the playoff predictions video. Make sure to tune in that, pending the weather for this weekend, because weather is a little iffy for the weekend. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.